All right, we're going to call back to order the prior adjourned meeting and take up the single item that we have remaining from that meeting, which is agenda item 21. So we'll go directly to the staff presentation. Ms. Berlin.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. On June 13th, the City Council approved the first reading of Ordinance 18-12. The purpose of the ordinance is to impose a local retail transactions and use tax to be administered by the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. The tax, if approved by the voters, would generate approximately $3.4 million annually for the city. Also, at the June 13th meeting, Council directed that an ad hoc committee comprised of the mayor and mayor pro tem would be established to review and provide staff with direction on the language for the ballot measure prior to the June 27th, 2018 meeting. The ad hoc committee met on June 19th, 2018, and proposed the following ballot language, which will come up on the screen in just a second, based on the ad hoc committee's direction. The language was determined to be to fund public safety and investments in inclusive economic development and community improvements. Shall the City of West Sacramento enact a 1/4% transactions and use tax, sales tax, providing approximately $3.4 million annually on an ongoing basis for unrestricted general revenue purposes. This item was on the agenda for June 27th, but because the ordinance must be approved by 2/3 of the full council, or effectively at least 4 members, and only 3 members were present on June 27th, the regular meeting was adjourned for this item to be heard tonight on July 9th. As mentioned in our prior item on June 13th, the proposed tax measure would increase West Sacramento's combined sales tax rate from 8% to 8.25%, and this shows where we would be in the region based on other increases in sales tax that are proposed in other jurisdictions. If council moves forward with approving the ordinance and the resolution tonight, this is the schedule of the next steps. July 23rd, the arguments would be due. Rebuttals would be due on August 2nd. The general election is on November 6th, and then the effective date of the ordinance when the of the tax measure when the measure would start generating revenue is April 1st of 2019. The recommended action for tonight is for council, if the council determines that the measure should move forward, is to adopt Ordinance 18-12, which begins the process for placing the new transactions and use tax on the ballot and meets the legal requirements of state law for the tax to be administered by the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Adoption of Resolution 8-44 would also formally approve the ballot measure language and call the election. Resolution 1844 would also authorize the mayor to prepare a written argument in support of the measure and directs the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis of the measure, as well as requesting the Yolo County Board of Supervisors consolidate the transaction use tax election with the statewide election. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions at this time? All right, we had a couple requests to speak and public comment on this item. So the first is Pat Flint, who will be followed by Danny Langford.
Thank you, council members. I cannot tell you how very disappointed I am that you again use public safety as a pawn to get a tax increase for the city. This is a forever tax with no specifics and no public accountability. Public safety has always been a low priority for this council, and it should be your highest. The agreement our police and fire had to settle for is a disgrace, not only to them, but as us to the public who they serve well. Thank you.
All right, and Danny Langford.
I have some great concerns about this measure as well. Also, we all support police and fire. I don't think that's that's even an issue. But to put it on the backs, especially where it can be used as a political something against them, in a tax measure, it's not fair to this community. And I'm talking to a lot of people in the community without the specific language stating it's going to go specifically for police, and even to add fire if you want to make it a safety tax measure. Community members aren't going to support this. There's too much of a climate of distrust in this community because many of us don't feel the money's been spent for tax measures properly for police, fire, and flood. So to not have the specific language stating specifically where it's going to go, this isn't going to pass in the community. And then the policemen are the ones that are going to be the losers here, which makes our whole community be at a loss. Please change that language, please, before you put this on moving forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll turn it into the council for further questions or discussion. And this is up for second reading tonight, so our range of, ability to make major surgery to the language is relatively limited, because second reading is intended to be the point which the item has already been fully developed. I did want to ask the city attorney, though, some of the research on voter participation suggests that every extra word reduces, is by a small amount, but each, cumulatively reduces voter interest and comprehension of the matter, of the measures. And in this particular measure, we had included language that was expected to be required by the ballot initiative that was on its way to the November ballot. Since we took up first reading on this item, that ballot measure has been withdrawn. So I'm curious whether it is possible for us to achieve a little bit more parsimony in or slightly more parsimony in the language of the measure, given that those requirements are no longer anticipated.
I can save you one word.
Babe.
You could take out the word unrestricted
Okay.
and leave in general revenue purposes. And the reason for general revenue purposes, as you all know, is this is a general sales tax measure. A special tax measure would require a 2/3 vote. And also, as you pointed out, you'd have a different ordinance for a special tax measure, so you'd have to go back to first reading again if you wanted to change this into a special tax. And I'm not sure that there's enough time to get it on the ballot if you were to change it tonight. But you could take out that one word, and that would not.
Okay. All right, and that would make it more consistent with our prior ballot measures in the same area. Okay.
Correct.
Other questions or discussion?
I do.
Councilmember Orozco?
Thank you. I consider myself a big supporter of public safety, not only in this community, but in this entire region. I spent my life, my last 16 years, as a deputy district attorney fighting for the rights of victims and for my community and other people's communities to be safer. My husband has spent over 2 decades as a sworn police officer for Sacramento Police Department. And I know firsthand, based on my own personal experiences as well as my experiences in this community, that we are having a very hard time recruiting qualified officers to serve on our police force. We are having problems retaining these officers, the ones that we've invested who knows how much money, but lots of, made a tremendous investment in their training and experience to serve on our streets as they get to know our children and our families and patrol these streets and know where the problem areas are. We can't afford to lose them. In order to compensate our officers competitively with other jurisdictions in this region, we have to do something. And the difference is so tremendous that at this point, I don't think I could speak for everybody in the city when we hear of an idea of taxes. Well, our knee-jerk reaction is to react to negatively. However, this community has spoken, and they have said that they support their officers, their public safety officers, and that they want their officers to stay here, and they want them to get raises and to be compensated commensurate with our partners across the river and in the region. And speaking of across the river, Sacramento is doing a similar tax measure by an additional quarter-cent tax than we are, and they are expanding it. Am I correct in that? They are expanding it to not only be public safety, but other economic development targets as well. So I am absolutely in support of spending an additional penny every $4 that I go to the cash register in order to send a message to the officers in West Sacramento and our public safety community as a whole, to let them know that that's what I stand for. I just can't underscore how much this is a top priority for our community, and as such, I am in great support.
I mean,
President
I
Sidney?
concur with that. We actually need to have this tax go forward to be able to compensate the officers. And I think this is the second reading, so I don't have to go over all the comments from the first time this came to us. It is helpful to have that update and to take out that, I think that is language that can easily be, that word can be taken out. That's great.
Mr. Johansson?
Yeah, without going over what we went over last time, I would agree that I would support this measure, and I think we've had a history of spending what we said we would do with the tax measures appropriately, although this one doesn't necessarily have a report that's attached to it or an advisory measure. History has shown that we have stayed within the balance of what the voters approved in terms of tax measures that we've promoted from the dais here. So I'm totally supportive of this. West Sacramento is not alone in the communities that are experiencing financial difficulties from a number of different factors. The fact of the matter is we do need funds for public safety. We've had a difficult issue, I know, with the police in recruiting and retaining people. It becomes very expensive to train people and to have them move on. So this is going to go a long ways to help remedy that situation. I'm supportive of it.
Yeah, well, I was not here in the last meeting this was taken up, so I am also very supportive of this. I mean, this is not a situation anyone wants to be in, but the roots of this are really in in terms of the public safety component and the police component. The roots of it are in the action by CalPERS, almost 2 decades ago. But when CalPERS said to cities across the state, you can dramatically increase retirement benefits for police and fire, and it will be at no cost because we will be earning 10 or 12% every year. And so cities and their police and fire unions reached agreements to accomplish that, because who wouldn't want to provide additional compensation for public safety officers at no cost? And recognized in retirement the hard work and a career and sacrifice that they've made for their communities, and it turned out almost immediately, but that was not true. That the cost is severe, and as a result, our city and every other city in California is facing the challenges of massive increases in our pension bills. And so the cruel irony of this is that the average taxpayer of West Sacramento through the city's budget is paying far more for each police officer than we did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. But virtually none of that is in the police officer's pocket. That's the reality, is our cost per officer is going up so much without any of that money getting to the officer because it has to be paid to CalPERS. And that situation is going to get much, much worse in the future. So this can't be a temporary measure. This is a permanent change in the needs for compensation. And if our CalPERS cost goes up $1 million a year, that's the equivalent of 6 police officers, every year, that would need to be eliminated. So the consequences of those CalPERS changes are enormous. The second is that in the recession and as the CalPERS effects have been felt, other jurisdictions in the region have implemented sales tax increases for this purpose. Measure U in the city of Sacramento, for a half a cent, was enacted during the recession at a time when the city of Sacramento went to its voters and said, we're going to close all the pools and half the fire stations and whatever unless you vote for this tax measure. West Sacramento did not increase taxes in the recession. We made other cuts, and our employees came up with creative ideas and a lot of sacrifice in order to avoid that, but we made no cuts. And Sacramento raised their sales taxes by half cent. In order to continue to spend what they were spending and to continue to add additional compensation. And the city of Roseville, which was one of our major competitors and colleagues, also started to provide additional compensation. And they are now, more attractive for new recruits to go work because they've been able to pay more because of that additional spending. It's put Roseville in a horrible financial hole so that Roseville now has a half-cent sales tax going on the ballot in November. And Sacramento has a renewal of that initial half-cent plus another half-cent for a total of 1 penny. And so we have tried to hold the line on taxes to the maximum extent possible in this city, but we compete in the regional market for police officers, for all employees, but police officers are the class of employee in West Sacramento where we have experienced the most severe recruitment problems. And it is essential that, as has been said by my colleagues, that we tackle those head-on and not by 1% a year or whatever we can scrape together out of the couch here in City Hall, but really tackle it in a serious way. And the citizens of this community have communicated very clearly that that's important for all the reasons that have been said. So. I'm very supportive of this. The language of it and the focus on inclusive economic development and community improvements, that's largely intended to be in alignment with what Sacramento is doing and also what our local community needs are, partly to assure that voters here aren't confused by a bunch of campaigns from Sacramento about something that sounds similar but isn't exactly the same, but also to invest in those areas in our city that are equally critical, areas around housing affordability for all and around economic development and services in neighborhoods and the kinds of basics. But make no mistake, there's not a lot of money in here for those things. The bulk of what's in this measure is to deal principally with our ability to recruit high quality police officers. For those who've been in this community for a long time, we know what it's like when you don't have the very best in your law enforcement department. It's one of the reasons why West Sacramento Incorporated was to take control, have a full professional police department. We achieved that, and we're not about to go backwards. And so this is an important measure to step forward. So, all right. There's no further discussion? Then
To make a motion.
okay, Councilmember Roscoe.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Ms. Orozco and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem, by Ms. Sandine. Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma is out of town now on work assignments. But with that, then, please ask the clerk to call the roll.
Can I
Ms.
confirm?
I'm sorry, in the motion and the second include the striking of the word unrestricted?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Sandine?
Aye.
Councilmember Johannesson?
Yes.
Councilmember Orozco?
Yes.
Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so that motion carries 4-0, and that being the only item on the remainder of the agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, hearing none, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.